What has gone off the rails is the Christian virtue of love God and love your fellow men. The God of this land is Jesus Christ. He established it. He inspired its foundations. He set its course. And he is holding us accountable for everything we say and do, not only as agents in government, but as citizens who create that government. We always get the government we deserve. Yeah, the God of this land, right. Slavery and bigotry and capitalism and colonialism, right. You have missed the point, Junior, badly.
Welcome out to God and Country. I'm Uriah Kennedy, and this is Ingrid Bettridge. We got a tremendous guest on with us this week, the man, the myth, the legend himself. This is Glenn Rawson. Glenn Rawson is very, very well known for his voice all over the place, and we're going to be discussing how he got into this and what made his stories and his voice so popular and so famous. So again, like, subscribe, and share us out there. We're trying to get this podcast out as much as possible. Anything that is conservative, Christian, YouTube tends to suppress it. So please help us get it out and share it in your social media, share it amongst your friends and neighbors, and so the channel can grow. Look down below for our merchandise there. You'll find our t-shirts. Also, I have a new book that is out. We're going to be discussing my book as well as Glenn's got a couple of books out here. So look for that down below. But getting started here with Glenn. Glenn, where were you born and raised, and how did you get started?
How did I get started? All right, my mortal journey. I was born in Rigby, Idaho, but I didn't grow up there. My parents, when I was like 4 or 5 years old, my dad took a job as a ranch hand, which moved us up into the Lemhi Valley, which is kind of like the Salmon River country. It's kind of south central Idaho, right up on the edge of the wilderness area. So I grew up all through my boyhood and my high school years. I was going to school and living in the Lemhi Valley. There's a little place up there called Hayden Creek. There's no town, not for 30 miles, but it's just a collection of ranches. It's about as heavenly a place as you'll ever find in the world, and that's where this redneck grew up.
Aww.
I went to Ledore High School, and there was there was like 200 kids in the school when it was fully in session, 1 through 12. And we were double the population of the town when the school was full.
So was 1 through 12 all in one building?
All in one building. From the south end was the elementary, the north end was the high school.
Wow, that must have been
It's like
interesting.
a Hallmark movie.
Well, it was fun. I loved it. And my class was one of the largest in the school. We were about 25 kids.
Was your class the entire high school?
No. No, there were 4 grades. Freshman was considered high school in those days. So it was very small, very quaint. We all knew each other. We knew everybody up and down the valley. But it was a great way to grow up.
And so what did your dad do? You guys out there in the fields doing horses, cattle? What were you guys doing?
Well, my dad was a ranch hand, or maybe more appropriately, a ranch manager. We went up there for him to manage a place on Hayden Creek, and then he just moved from place to place and spread to spread and worked either as a ranch hand or a ranch manager, but always cowboy. And that's how I grew up. I just grew up punching cows. We'd work in the fields in the summer putting up hay and grain, and then the rest of the year we were working cows.
This is Uriah Kennedy from God and Country, and I've been fishing since I was a little kid. My father used to take me out there and teach me how to tie the knots to get my lure on the end of that line, and then cast it into the stream or in the local lake that we were fishing at. There are very few things in this world that are more relaxing and more fun than getting out on the water and pulling in a big fish. In order to have that type of success that you want, to be able to get out there with your kids and be able to have them have that success, or not get skunked yourself, you have to have the best equipment. We all have known and trusted Rapala from the time we were little kids. Rapala has the best lures and the best equipment that you could possibly buy. Trust Rapala in all these needs, and go to Rapala by using the link that is on our description, or QR code that's going to be popping up on your screen. Again, you must use the link in our description or the QR code that's popping up on your screen. Trust Rapala for these fishing needs. Again, any type of lures, tools, knives, clothing, and apparel that you will need, you can go to Rapala and get those needs taken care of. Enjoy the water and enjoy being out there with your kids, and be successful at the same time, because there's nothing like getting skunked, but there's nothing more joyous than pulling in that big fish. So trust Rapala for those fishing needs, and go to Rapala right now using the link in the description, the QR code that's popping up on your screen. And thank you for supporting our channel. Oh, that sounds like the life I would have grown up with.
Yeah, I all of this is very familiar to me, because that's what I grew up with, and I've never been able to outgrow it.
No, I never grew up to it. Growing up, I grew up in the west side of Provo, and it was nothing but horse fields for as far as the eye could see, way out there. Way long before it was ever developed. We're out by the lake out there. And I grew up working at the horse ranches around me, so I grew up running horses, throwing hay bales.
Yeah, it's a great way to live.
Fences.
I would love to have done that with my family, but teaching seminary and the income thereof, it just didn't allow itself. So,
So you go from Idaho. How did you get down to Utah? Then,
well, there was a long journey in between, because when I was living on the ranch with my family, and when I was in high school, I wasn't at all religious. In fact, my parents were very anti-religious, and my mother my mother still is. My dad was very bitter and angry, so I had no religious upbringing.
What do you think caused that?
He got offended. My grandfather first got his feelings hurt, and he left. And then my father later, he got his feelings hurt, and he left. And my grandpa eventually came back about 1970, but my dad never did. So my upbringing was Idaho, and my great aspirations growing up was I was going to be a cowboy. That's all I wanted. And as I got a little older, I branched out into doing rodeo. But my dad insisted that I go to college. He didn't want me at all to turn out like him. He wanted me to go to college, so I did. That took me to Pocatello. And it was there that I joined the church, and my life turned around, and I started become a practicing Christian from that point forward.
What were you studying?
I was studying what came natural to me, wildlife and range science. I was born a hunter, a trapper, and that's what I was going to study. So, and then all of that sort of flipped on its head about 3 years in, and I went on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And when I did, right at the end, I felt very strongly impressed that I should come back and teach at the Missionary Training Center. And from that point forward, Idaho was pretty much in the rearview mirror. Got married, started a family, and from teaching at the MTC, it went right into teaching seminary and eventually institute. So,
where did you teach seminary and institute at?
I was called to teach seminary in Blackfoot, which ironically...
Back to Idaho.
Blackfoot, Idaho. I went back to Idaho. And the irony of that story is that my last 2 years of high school, my dad took a job at a ranch in Blackfoot. I graduated from Blackfoot, and I was kind of a bum, a radical, not at all religious, and a kind of just a drunken, rowdy cowboy. And now here I am going back to Blackfoot to teach seminary.
So the big question is the same teacher still around? Did you know people?
Yeah, some of them were still there. But I had been so much of a loner the first go-round that, well, they remembered me, but I don't remember you looking quite like that. You know?
Yeah, I bet there was quite a radical change there.
There was a bit of difference there. So I went back to teach there. I taught there for 17 years. And we pretty much raised our family right there. Then I went from there to teach at the Institute in Pocatello, which was another irony because that's where I had joined the church, was in Pocatello, in the Institute. I didn't have a home ward. The Institute was my home ward.
That's so crazy how God sets it up. When you can see it from behind in the rearview mirror, you just see the plan there was different than yours.
Well, you say crazy. I think he has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And there's paybacks. I think it was all payback.
I could totally believe that. So going back to your ranch days, you said you got into rodeo and stuff.
That was we always dabbled
good with the
it as a kid.
lasso? Were you
No, I was
bucking?
I was a bronc rider.
You were a bronc rider. So
Yeah.
what did you do as a bronc
Oh,
rider?
I was terrible. I was terrible. Absolutely. That's why I didn't continue my illustrious career, because it was anything but. I did it. I did a lot playing around. You know, when I was just a high school kid, we'd go out and we'd ride rope and steers and stuff like that. You know, an early version of bull riding. But when I got to college, I decided I'd try my hand at bareback, and it wasn't that hard. I just wasn't that coordinated. I just wasn't that good at it. And so I did it 2 seasons, and I thought, no, I've got enough injuries. That's enough.
I was just going to ask you, how was the injuries? Any broken bones or anything?
No, I didn't break anything. I got out before I broke anything, but I've got an ankle that still pops mightily because of that.
You got kicked off hard a few times.
I got thrown off and come down wrong. And, you know, my right arm is now 1.5 inches longer than my left arm. Just kidding. That was enough.
Just yanking on it.
Yep.
Well, I can imagine how they strap themselves into there, and they're just everything you can do just to hold on.
Yeah, and it wasn't a problem for me to stay on. It was just a problem for me to score. You know, that's another art, is learning how to score.
Because a lot of people stay on, but it's the look. It's how you look up there.
Yeah, it's how you look. It's how you perform against the horse. And I was no good at that.
Yeah, you were just ragdoll up there or something.
I was.
When you came back to Blackfoot, was your father still in that area?
Yeah, my parents were still in that area when I came back there. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's not true. They had left there in 1980, and moved to Pocatello. So they were in Pokey, which is close by. But we were in Blackfoot, and I came there in 88. 88.
So how was your relationship with your parents after becoming practicing Christian?
Not good, because it's the closest my dad and I ever got into a fist fight when I became a Christian. His bitterness and his hatred towards it was so strong that it was the closest him and I ever came to a fist fight, and probably would have been had my mother not stepped in to break it up. Mm. So we just, you know, my dad and I were friends, and we stayed friends our whole life. There was just things we didn't talk about. You know, he had one political party, I had another. He had one set of theological beliefs, and I had another. We didn't talk religion or politics.
Much like today.
Well, that's
Yes.
exactly what we're doing. It's talking religion and politics here.
Yeah.
How was the relationship with the grandkids?
Oh, it was good. It was very good. We brought them over all the time, and they were good to them, and vice versa.
So you go from Institute, and then you get invited to, well, you're doing something else as you're teaching Institute to get to radio and TVs.
Well, I was teaching in Blackfoot at the time when, again, I was approached by a radio station, one of their DJs, if I would come and just tell stories, religious, inspirational stories on their Sunday program format. I didn't think it would ever become anything serious. I didn't think it would go anywhere. But I said, sure. And after a couple of years, it took off. And so from about 95 to 97, I can't remember exactly when, somewhere in there, we started doing radio stories. And that became, as it were, a part-time job. But I wasn't paid for it. It was all pro bono. And I did that for decades.
So were you a natural storyteller, or did it develop as you were telling those stories for someone?
Well, a little bit of both. I'd learned as a teacher, if you're going to teach the scriptures, if you're going to teach the Bible to somebody, then you better know what the story is. Otherwise, you're just sounding brass and tinkling cymbal. You're just noise. So I committed it to heart that if I was going to teach the scriptures, I would know that story insofar as the facts and the details and the history was known. So I became a storyteller of doctrinal scripture. So storytelling became it was an art I had to learn. But my mentor, my muse was Paul Harvey.
Yeah, good old Paul Harvey.
I grew up listening to him, and he had a way of just his enthusiasm, his way of telling a story, just grab you by the nose and pull you right in.
I grew up with Paul Harvey. And as a young kid, I'd listen to him, and I really wasn't political at the time. I could really care less about politics, but it was the storytelling. It was the way it came across that it grabbed you instantaneously. You wanted to sit there and listen to it.
Right, and so my storytelling followed his pattern. He would conclude with, and now you know the rest of the story. I don't use that line, but, he always had that way of telling a story that right at the very end, it was just some gotcha, right at the very end where you didn't see it coming. And that's what would hook you and pull you in, and you would remember. I started doing the same thing decades ago.
What radio station was it up there?
Oh, gee, and up in the Salmon River country when I was just a boy, we only had one radio station and one television station.
It was the radio station.
And I don't even remember, KSRA, I think it was, radio,
Right.
Salmon River Radio. That's all we had in those days.
So I have a great uncle, my grandmother's brother, that was on radio up there during that whole time you were up there.
He was probably there. That's probably the guy I listened to.
So he was the sportscaster. Every high school game.
On radio or on TV?
On radio.
In Salmon.
In Pocatello and in, he was in Rexburg. And so he would do all of the high schools. He would also do what was Rick's College back then.
Yeah.
What was his name?
His last name is Reidelbach.
Oh, Reidelbach or Reidulch?
Reidelbach or Reidelbach.
Okay, because I remember a sportscaster named Reidulch, Bryce Reidulch, but I don't, Reidelbach doesn't sound familiar.
Ernie Reidelbach.
I know, that doesn't sound
He did
familiar.
it but when he passed away, they had this whole event because he had done it for like 50 years.
Man, those guys become an institution. Name doesn't sound familiar.
No. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you start branching into Utah as that gets more popular. How did you get into the Sunday morning thing that went everywhere here in Utah and every place else?
You mean on TV?
Yeah. How did that radio station grow? Because I listened to you growing up in high school on the radio and on TV on Sunday mornings.
Well, the radio thing evolved more or less organically. First of all, it was just on one station right there in southeast Idaho. But then circumstances took off where Carl Watkins, what's the word? He took it and I can't think of it. He branched it out into other stations, and he created a program, a format, and then he just gave it to stations literally all over the United States. So the radio thing just branched out and went everywhere. And it's still going. Yeah. He's got a program called Sounds of Sunday 24/7. And it's still going, and he's still doing it. He's well into his 80s, but he still does it. But then, and I'm doing all that while I'm still teaching. But then I get a phone call asking me if I would come to Salt Lake and if I would tell stories on TV for church specials. Okay. My brethren at the Institute thought that was hilarious because they would always say in gatherings, Rawson, you've got the perfect face for radio. They would make jokes about how ugly I was and I didn't belong on TV. And the next thing I know, I'm on TV. And then where it went from there to television full time is I had left Seminary Institute. I would just felt like it was a necessary thing to move on. And I got a phone call asking me if I would come to Salt Lake and participate in the Joseph Smith Papers. They wanted to produce a television series. Would I write that television series? So I said, I'll be there tomorrow. And I drove down to Salt Lake, and they asked me to take on the job of creating a television documentary series based on the life of the Latter-day Saint prophet, Joseph Smith. And I did. I went down and they handed me boxes of material from interviews with scholars, because it was not meant to be a religious project. It was meant to be a papers project. It was not at all.
Just a history.
Yeah, it was historical. It was not at all focused on anything proselyting. It was focused on the papers and the history of Joseph Smith based on the documents. The same thing they've done for Washington, Franklin, Jefferson, and others. They were going to do it for Joseph. Would I come and participate? And I would take the material gathered and gleaned by the scholars, and I would then write it into a television show, I think 26 minutes in length. So I created the first script.
You had to write that. Because I thought there was like maybe a team that would help you write that, but no, you had to write all that yourself.
I had to glean through mountains of material and interviews.
How long did it take you to write one episode?
Well, the first one took me like 2 weeks to just glean through. A 26-minute show is about 4,000 words. I just finished another documentary 2 days ago, and it takes days. Now it still takes me days to create a single one, and that doesn't count the interviews and gathering up all the research. That's just the abridging and the writing.
So this just turned into a full-time job then, because it had to have been.
Yeah, the Joseph Smith Papers project was full-time, week to week, a show every single week for 2 years. And I still remember when we got that first show written, I still didn't quite know what my role was. I handed in the script. It was approved, and then it came back, and they said, okay, come with me. And by the way, grab your suit and tie. And the next thing I know, I was in the back of the studio with this giant camera pointed at me. I was supposed to write and produce the show. I didn't know I was hosting it.
They left that part out.
They left that part out. And from that point forward, that was what would that have been? 2006, actually, 2006. Been on TV ever since. Our television show, and the Joseph Smith Papers ended after 2 years. We were done. And then Dennis Lyman and I, my good friend and partner, we took off and created another show that picked up where the other one left off, and we went for 7 more years. So we've been on KSL television and other stations since 2010, continuously.
It's a massive story. So I met you, when my father met you, back in 2005. So it was the Joseph Smith Jr. commemoration, his birthday celebration. There at the conference center, I believe you were there, a few others there during that season where the church was celebrating the birthday party.
How old were you?
It was 2005, so...
You were an adult.
Years ago, 30. Yeah, about 30 years old back then. So that's the first time we met, but we had been listening to you for a long time, and we were, as a family, as a Joseph Smith family, this is the announcement because it's the first time I've been talking about it on my podcast. So as a Joseph Smith Jr. descendant, we were part of the Joseph Smith Papers, so they're walking through things with us, make sure the family was approving of everything. Obviously, the church was going to do whatever they're going to do no matter what, but they wanted their 2 cents from the family, so we were involved for the first year or two in that, just to make sure the family approved everything, because my dad runs the Joseph Smith Jr. Family Organization. So, and that's where we started watching your show every single week. And so it surprises me that you had to write all that yourself, because it was detailed. It was just great history, and the storytelling was phenomenal.
But I was just a dumb grunt, more or less, because I came into the Joseph Smith Papers with no background in church history whatsoever, except I had a deep love for Joseph and knew a little of his history. So when we wrote that show, I was relying upon everything I wrote. I was relying upon these brilliant historians who knew so much more than I did. And so I would draw my facts from them, and every script I wrote went to them for approval. For years, everything I wrote was vetted by the most reliable, it was peer-reviewed, to use the language, by the most reliable historians. Thank heavens they didn't rely upon me, because we'd have been in trouble from the first episode.
Well, your knowledge had to have increased exponentially, because you're looking at so many things and just gleaning that information from boxes of information.
I went top to bottom, side to side, up, down, and around and through every way you can imagine the history of the church and the history of Joseph Smith. I saw everything about him, his warts, weaknesses, wrinkles. I saw it all. I saw his strengths. I saw everything as it was taught to me. And as I read it in the original documents, I read his letters and his diaries. And I wrote a book about those who knew him firsthand as a personal acquaintance. I wrote a book about their recollections about him and what the kind of man he was. So I got to see him not as a assiduous scholar digging into every comma. I didn't do that. I didn't have time. But I went way beyond the casual perusal of Joseph Smith's history. That was just what was required for the job. And yeah, I learned a lot.
You're a historian now yourself in your own fashion.
Well, I'm not even a traditional historian, but I am a historian of a different stripe. We'll talk about that later on. But yeah.
So you go from Joseph Smith Papers, and then you start doing another. You continue the other shows, the Sounds of the Sabbath on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, there were three things going on simultaneously. We didn't stop producing. The formal week-to-week television show ended in 2010. And then we started off with another show that went for another 7 years. But we still continued to write episodes of the Joseph Smith Papers right up until, 3 years ago, when the last book was done. We were done. But we were there from 2006, 2007, all the way to the duration of the end. So we were there. So there was that going on, radio is still going on, and the other television show is still going on. And then you pile on top of that podcasting and social media. There's a lot of irons in the fire all at once.
Extensive amount of irons in the fire. So how did the TV show get started?
Well, the original TV show, The Joseph Smith Papers, was the brainchild of my partner, Dennis Lyman. He was a cameraman working at KJazz Studios in Salt Lake, working for Larry Miller. Larry Miller was very committed to the Joseph Smith Papers and the books. But Dennis is a camera guy. He's a visual guy. He's the one that creates beautiful books like this. He's got a visual eye. He went to Larry and said, "We've got all this material. Let's make a TV show." And Larry said, "Yeah, let's do it." And that's where I entered. So that's how that show got started. When that show ended, or the 2-year run ended, Dennis and I...
What was the name of the show? And
it was called The Joseph Smith Papers.
So it continued. So the church sponsored it for the first 2 years, and then...
That's right.
You guys and Larry H. Miller picked it up for the next 7 years.
No, after that, Dennis and I picked it up and paid for it with what little retirement we had left. We did all of that. After the initial Joseph Smith Papers, both of us were unemployed. And I've never been employed since. I've been a bum ever since. But all of it's been paid for by us.
Really?
Yeah, it was the television shows we produced were our donation. They were our gift.
Incredible. I would have never thought.
I
Most
thought the
people
church
don't know.
was producing that thing the whole entire time. It's you guys.
They did the Joseph Smith papers. Larry funded that, the 2 years.
The 2 years.
But after that, the History of the Saints show and the ones that followed was all us. Most people, and my dear mother, one of them, think that if you're on TV, you must be rich.
No.
I assure you, you can be absolutely living penurious, paycheck to paycheck while making television.
So did you have another job while you're doing that? Because were you even making anything at that time on that show?
No. Well, what we would do is KSL had struck a deal with us that we would give them the show for free, and they would.
That's a good deal for them.
Yeah, because it didn't cost them anything, and then that they would give us, I think it was half the advertising. So what we began to do was they'd run the show, we'd publish a book, and then we would run ads, and it would only cost us half the price for the ads. So we didn't get anything, not a paycheck. But and for a while it was on BYU TV. For 2 seasons, I think it was on BYU TV, and then they ended it. They shifted their program and went a different way. BYU programming paid well for it for 1 year, and then it went away.
So how did you guys keep that funded then? Just doing it on your own time, giving it away for free, and then
Giving it away for free, and honestly, I have no idea how we ever made it. Somehow, paycheck. Now, Dennis eventually got another job, but I remained unemployed the whole time while I'm writing and researching. But then another thing entered into the equation that allowed me to keep going, and that was I started becoming in demand to take people on tours in different parts of the world. And that enabled me to survive while I continued this work.
When did that start?
13, 14 years ago.
I guess I'm trying to piece together because when I met you, you had moved into my neighborhood. What year was that?
Let's see, 2012 or 13, something like that.
Because he appears in church and I'm like telling my husband, that's Glenn Rawson.
Yeah. Yeah, we eventually got our 2 middle daughters out of high school, and we had 2 left at home. And so we said, this is the time to jump. Because previous to that time, from 2007 all the way to 2012 or whatever it was, I was commuting back and forth.
From where to where?
From Blackfoot
To Salt Lake?
to Salt Lake.
wow.
Oh, I assumed you were already living in Utah.
No, I was commuting while our children finished high school. And I would come down and spend 2 or 3 days in a hotel, and then I would go back, get my work done. Then I would go back to Blackfoot and I would write. And then come back down on Monday and go back to it again. It was I wore out 2 or 3 vehicles. But
That's incredibly gracious of you.
well, I don't know about that, but it was very expensive.
This story gets even more and more interesting as we
Yeah,
dig
I
into
haven't
it.
shared this with hardly anybody yet.
Yeah,
But
no
You
one out
heard it
there
here
would
first.
have guessed that's the way that whole thing came about.
Well, even now, the show that we have on KSL that runs on Sunday and on General Conference weekend, we still give that to them for free. And in exchange, we get half price on our ads that we put in the show. But it's still, on my part and Dennis's part, it's still pro bono. It's just a gift. Some of you will understand this word. It's consecration.
Yep, I understand that word very, very well. So, did you have another job while you're doing this, or
No, I didn't have it. All I had was
unemployed, so-
touring.
All you had was touring. So was that? I would assume that was just a few weeks out of the year, or how many weeks out of the year were you doing?
Well, it started off just, a few weeks out of the year. But it kept growing until it reached the point where, well, right after COVID was done, I was gone for 3 months at a time in Europe. On the average now, I'll travel between 150 and 200 days out of the year.
That's extensive traveling. You're hardly at home then.
Yeah.
And I would assume that on these traveling, you would have to write the stories there too, and find out the history, the background of wherever you're touring, so you could stand up in front of your audience and
Exactly.
give
That's
these great
my job.
stories. So
Yeah, I'm leaving for Asia in a week, and I just finished research on Chiang Mai in Thailand and research on Singapore. Has nothing to do with religion or Christianity. It's just fascinating stories wherever I am. And yeah, it's a lot of research.
So did you think you were going to be a writer when you growing up?
I still don't know where the commas go. I still don't know where to put a comma. And I write like I speak, like some old cowboy. And it's my writing is filled with similes and metaphors that are at one point very illustrative, but they're also will make you laugh. So no, I never thought I'd be a writer because I have no talent for it.
Well, you obviously do because it's working.
Well, no,
Everybody's
I can
intrigued.
tell us. There's a difference between telling a story and writing a story.
Well, you got
Two
to
different
write it
things.
before you tell it, right?
So here's what I have done. I found a middle ground. I will write a story down, and then I will tell it. I will tell the story over and over and adjust the writing to match the telling.
Uh-huh.
And that gets me by. But I am in no sense of the word a good
So
writer.
do you rehearse these stories at all, or you just get up and go?
I just get up and go.
That's so authentic,
Yeah. That's the way I've always done it because I can't do it the other way around.
Yeah, I've given talks, in all kinds of venues from political to religious. I never write them down. I can't.
Yeah.
Because I'm trained to fix my eyes on an audience and read the eyes and behaviors of an audience and adapt. I can't look at a silly piece of paper.
I have the same issue. When I get up and I do talks or public speaking or I do this podcast, I just have to go. It's just spontaneous. I'll do some research on it and read up on things, and I just let everything come to my head because I can't read off of something. I can't
Yeah.
do it.
Well, the thing that is requiring so much of my time now is not television anymore because we finished those television shows. Now we only do one occasionally. We put it in. But I still have my firesides and my podcasts that I do every Sunday. Every Sunday night at 8 o'clock, I will come on with a fireside or a devotional, or you can call it whatever you want, a story hour, you can call it whatever. But I will present 6 to 7 stories every Sunday. And those stories are original stories with me that I've gleaned from other people, from research, and those all have to be written, and those all have to be presented on camera. That is,
So you've never teleprompted it at all?
well, I have to now
You have to know.
because the stories are coming so fast now, and I don't have to teleprompt. I can go off the top of my head, but I've gotten a little more precise as a historian that if I'm going to tell a story from you, then I'm going to quote you. And so therefore I teleprompt because I want to get the quotes
Correct.
just right. I don't want to be putting words in your mouth. If you gave me a story, I don't want to misrepresent you. So I've gone to teleprompting so that I can stay honest as a historian.
I have my phone set up. It prompts me when you're about to go live. And it reminds me of back in the day when people would, huddle around a radio and listen to a story station. So I'll tell them, Glenn's coming on, and you can put it on. And we are watching, however, but there's something kind of simple, wholesome, and you never know what you're going to get. You don't know what the story's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish I still had my children young so that I could sit around and listen
around
to
the
those
old
stories.
radio.
And it's always
The old-timer
fabulous.
days, yeah. I still grew up that way. That's all we had. The one radio station and one television station that was mostly snow because it was so much interference. So yeah, that was my upbringing.
Well, let's go through some of your stories. So you've got the religious side of your stories. You've also got this tourism side of your stories.
And then I've got the political and the historical side. The bottom line of every story I've written is inspiration. There's a principle buried in every story. I am not, and I will never be, an entertainer. My job, my my whole credo is I'm not here to entertain. I'm not here to make you laugh. I couldn't care less about that. Even in my teaching when I'm out on tour, I'm not there to tickle their ears. I'm there to enrich them in the country I'm in. So every story's got a principle, a lesson. Every story is meant to inspire people to do better and be better, no matter what the subject is, be it Thai elephants or Singapore history or political history. Every story's got a point. So that's what drives me.
Well, I think that's why people listen too, because that's the feel good, right? That's what people look for, is that principle. Even though if they don't feel like that's what they're looking for, that's what they're expecting, right? And it still hits home, and then that
I hope so.
They walk away from is with that. So let's start with this. I've got a little quote from you that talks a little political.
All right.
I want to listen to it and,
Sure.
and get into this.
All right. Well, the delivery of that speech, those electrifying words, united that body, and Virginia eventually armed herself for the revolution. In fact, one of Virginia's sons would lead that revolution starting in Boston, George Washington. That would be the war that would spend the blood of patriots and redeem the land of America and purchase a freedom that we have now enjoyed for over 200 years. I have been most alarmed lately.
It's
everywhere, yeah. At the sentiments expressed by some who have been so willing to surrender not only their freedom, but mine, who have denounced this wonderful land and nation as flawed as it is, and have either turned their back on it or declared that it deserves to be destroyed. I do not agree. I extend once more that the commitment of our fathers is the calling of our time. The call to unite in covenants of righteousness under the title of liberty, as was done once before. The call to serve the God of this land, who is Jesus Christ. A call to obey the law, whether constitutional or spiritual, for they're the same. And if we answer that call and fight, stand by, and defend our land, our rights, our constitutional liberties, our people, our families, then the God of this land will stand by us, and we will remain a free people.
I just thought that fits perfectly within God and country, because there's nothing more patriotic than that. I mean, the whole reason why we put this podcast together is to put those two things together,
right.
God and country.
Yeah.
Because this country's losing its morals, and it's losing it quickly. And if people don't have a sense of God-fearing belief that Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior, as well as this country was put together for a reason, and we have to hold to those freedoms. We have to hold to that Constitution. I mean, George Washington was inspired. The founding fathers were inspired. And people want to take God out of everything and think, no, there's separation of church and state. No, it's not
That's
separation
not what that
of church
means.
and state. There's no state-sponsored church. There's a big difference there. But the way society is now, we're so polarized with what's going on in Israel and all these activists that are against Israel and promoting Hamas, and all these people are against what Trump's doing in Iran, and they want to promote dictators, whether it's Iran or Venezuela or anything else, or if they just surely want to just take God out of everything, remove it from our schools. I mean, they're willing to put pornographic books into our schools, and we talk about that all the time. There's just a lot of moral degradation in society, and bringing God back into this is what this country needs. In fact, if you look up on our page, we got to this quote. So if you pull up our channel here, you'll see right at the top of our channel, "The time has come to turn to God and reassert our trust in Him, for the healing of America. Our country is in need of and ready for a spiritual renewal. So going to your stories, kind of help us put those things together, your faith and your patriotism and what those things mean to you.
It's nuanced, and I suppose I stand in a different place than most people when it comes to the history of this land. I don't care what religion a person belongs to, what religion they espouse, or none at all. There's religious institutions, and then there's God-fearing people. And I'm all in favor of God-fearing people, be they of whatever church or denomination, Christian or otherwise. That isn't my concern. My concern is people's behavior inside this country, how they act and interact with one another. An interesting insight is that you take the United States of America and you compare it to Singapore. Now, Singapore is a city-state. It's a nation-state. One little small area, but it's got its own democratic government. But Singapore is a classic illustration of two different spectrums of democracy or democratic principles. Namely, it's this. The founding of America was adversarial. We were against Great Britain. And we were fighting to be heard. We were fighting for a voice. We were fighting for the free exercise of our religion. And it was very much about the individual and his rights and his freedom. And we would fight to the death, and we did, to claim that right to govern ourselves. And so our democracy, and I use that term loosely because we're a representative democracy, not a pure one. But our democracy is based on suspicion, mistrust, and adversarial relationships. That's the whole idea of checks and balances in our government. Everybody mistrusts everybody else, all for the idea that we're going to oversight everything you do, and we're going to watch you, and you're going to watch us, and we're both going to watch them, so that nobody runs away with too much power to overcome our individual rights. On the opposite side now is a country like Singapore. Singapore's whole goal, their whole democratic institutions are not based on mistrust and watching each other. It's unity. They said, we are so small that if we don't band together, pool our resources, and take care of each other, then we will be overthrown. And so Singapore created a democracy where the people have a voice, but unity and the whole overrides the individual. They're still a free people, but they're so strict in their freedom that we Americans go over there and say, well, this is a totalitarian state. I can't even spit on the sidewalk. Well, their whole idea is you can choose, but there'll be consequences with your choice because we have to protect ourselves as a people. It's not the rights of the individual, it's the rights of everyone. But in America, our system is based on adversarial relationships. That's what it was founded on. We do not trust anyone with power, and it came to us from a British heritage. Therefore, today in America, it isn't an evil thing to disagree. It isn't even an evil thing to debate or even contend in Congress or in political citizen venues and forums. We're supposed to argue. We're supposed to debate. However, what has gone off the rails is the Christian virtue of love God and love your fellow men. I don't have to agree with your politics or yours or anybody else. And I can say so. And you should say so if you don't agree. But attacking, vilifying, or otherwise carrying it to the extreme of I hate you so much I'm going to kill you or I'm going to suppress your voice, that's all wrong. So, in summary, The God of this land is Jesus Christ. And I need to explain what that means. The God of this land is Jesus Christ. You can call him by whatever name suits your religious persuasions. I don't care. But the rules are the same. We take care of each other. We respect him. We respect each other. And we live by his rules. And if we live by his rules, we have no need to worry about the laws of the land. They'll take care of themselves.
Well, the forefathers put together and said the Constitution is solely insufficient if it's not run by God-fearing people. It's completely insufficient because if we take God out of things, if we take morals out of things, we're going to get what we're getting right now, which is it's so adversarial that people are willing to kill each other.
Right.
We saw that with Charlie Kirk here just a couple months ago, of how adversarial it is getting, and how there's a certain religious side of our constitution, of our government, that is so adversarial that it doesn't matter what the right thing is to do, they're going to oppose it no matter what, because Trump's doing it or it's related to God in any way, shape, or form. And those of us here on the right, we're like, well, we're not looking for Jesus Christ to be our president of the United States. We're not looking for someone who's perfect.
We're not looking even for a religious leader to be our president or our congressman. That isn't the point.
That isn't the point. And people want to use the frailties of man and your weaknesses against you to demean you, to ridicule you, and to completely discredit you. And they're doing that to the United States as a whole. So they create purposeful division. So they'll take race and purposely try to use race to divide us, or sexual orientation, or social economic status, or whatever it is they want to do, because they want the division, because out of division they can gain power. Mm-hmm. They can gain control. And to them, it's more important the power than control than it is the unity, right? Mm-hmm. God has always said, if you're not one, you're not mine. Because divided, you will fall. We look back at Rome, the second they started dividing themselves within, that great empire fell. And the same thing is going to happen in the United States unless we learn to come together. And the only thing that's going to bring us together as a nation is the religious beginnings of this country. Mm-hmm. And people want to take that out and deny that and say, no, the founding fathers didn't start this country off of God. They didn't do this. They didn't do that. And they want to deny everything that has to do with God, period.
Some do. And unfortunately, too many want to take God, or whatever you want to call him, out of American society. I agree. But I think that that is the seeds of our destruction. Because when it comes down to it, doesn't matter what government, doesn't matter what people, we're all interested in happiness. We're all interested in owning our own property. We're all interested in the same things: family, children, peace, the power to take care of ourselves, to support ourselves, and live happily in society. When it comes down to it, that's what it's all about. And whether you like it or not, this is where I stand. This universe is governed by law. If you don't believe it, jump off a third-story building and tell me you don't believe in the law of gravity. Go ahead. That this universe is governed by law. And whether we like it or not, we have to live in accordance with that law if we want to receive desired outcomes. And the God of this land is Jesus Christ. He established it. He inspired its foundations. He set its course. And he is holding us accountable for everything we say and do, not only as agents in government, but as citizens who create that government. We always get the government we deserve as a people.
Our very first podcast, literally the very first, I would recommend people go back and watch the very first one. We were brand new at it, so it's a little grainy that the video's not good. We were still learning video. We're still learning audio, the very, very first podcast. But the principles were the key and the core to what we were starting here. We quoted President Nelson, and then we quoted Ben Carson. That two completely different religions, but they came together with the same principles, that Ben Carson would travel this country, and he would see that breakdown of people just wanting to take God out of everything. And he's saying, no, that's not what we should be doing. We should be putting it back in. And it doesn't matter, and I've said this many times on this podcast, it doesn't matter if you're LDS, Mormon, what Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic, Southern Protestant, evangelical, non-denominational. It doesn't matter, because we all need to come together on those same common principles, which is our Lord and Savior is Jesus Christ. He saved us all, and we're going to be able to return to our Father in heaven again. Every single Christian religion out there believes in those principles. Now, how we get there may be different between the different sects that we have. And there's too many people that are Christian that want to poke and tear apart the differences. And I've always said from the beginning, stop poking apart the differences, even if it's the extremes of like the Jehovah's Witnesses that everybody laughs at. Come together on what's common, because if we don't come together on what's common, we will self-destruct.
And that's where our strength will come from. And it's amazed me over this last year how we've had those of Jewish faith. We've had, I'm not even, we don't ask, but, definitely of different faiths. And our principles are the same. And we do believe in the same things. And we want the same things. And I've grown to love every person we've had on here, even when sometimes politically I've disagreed with the choice they've made or how they voted. When you get to the human part, that they have an inner desire for the same things that I want, that's where our strength should be coming from.
I agree.
But how do we not fall for this? How do we not fall for the division?
Let me explain this. In keeping with this book, it's been splashed all over the internet. I got a guy came on the other day, and he took issue with the whole thesis.
Tell the audience a little bit about your book. Let's promote your book a little bit. So tell them what it is.
Well, okay, all right. I'm not sure whether I should go with this train. I'll come back to the book in a minute. But the whole thesis of the God of this land, the guy came on and he said, the God of this land, you're saying that, and these are my words, not his. He said, you're saying that God established the United States of America. Therefore, you're saying that God sponsored white supremacy, because the founders were all white. You're saying that God sponsored ruthless capitalism. You're saying that God sponsored rapacious colonialism. You're saying that God sponsored slavery. You're saying that God sponsored bigotry and segregation and etc. If God established this nation, then how are you going to explain the dark and checkered past of the United States of America, most particularly and especially, and enslaved people for generations? And there you have it. You throw that out to most politically right-wing people who believe that the God of this land is Jesus Christ, and they're left bumbling a hot potato. How do you answer that?
Well,
now I have an answer.
I have really good answers to that too.
So do I, and that's where we'll come back to the book. But go ahead.
Yeah, I have really good answers to that. The whole premise behind this country is the same thing behind an individual, right? It's President Trump, it's Bush, it's Clinton, it's every human being that's been a president or a leader or a political leader or a religious leader, or even nobody. It's just me as a father of 5 kids. Nobody is perfect. Nobody. Joseph Smith, starting off with him, said it the best way. He says, I feel like I'm a rock that's getting thrown down the mountain, and every single time I hit a rock, I get a chipped off of me. It's violent, but we learn to become better people. The nation itself was made of humans, and they had to learn and grow. We didn't walk into and all of a sudden, boom, we're going to have this awe-inspiring, perfect country right out the get-go, day one. There's not going to be a single flaw. And that's where the division comes in, because people want to pick something apart because the division feels good to them. They want to tear something down. They just want to see the world burn. And that mentality is what is destroying this country right now. Well, you have to look at the positives. This is the only country ever that would have gotten rid of slavery and brought those minorities to where they are today. I talk of the Red Tails in World War II. Just a phenomenal story of these young black Americans that were pilots, and nobody would give them a chance. And they were stuck bombing trains and convoys and stuff like that, and bridges, and no one would give them a chance until one day they were put out there to protect these bombers. And the white pilots, every single time the German pilots or fighters would come in, they would take off, right? Because all they cared about was becoming an ace. And they'd leave the bomber stranded, and they'd lose dozens of bombers. And every single bomber had 10, 15 men on it. Just massive, massive casualties. And the only group that stuck with them and didn't lose a single bomber was the Red Tails. You learn from your trials, you learn from your struggles. We learned from slavery and became better people. Even though it lasted clear to the 60s, we became better because of it. There was segregation. There's always that division. There's always that comparison of one religion against the other, right? Joseph Smith figured that out when he was growing up because of all the different religions, and reason why he wanted to ask of God and figure out for himself what was right and wrong. It's that division, it's that adversity, it's that conflict that makes us better people. It's that conflict that made this nation the greatest nation on earth. So instead of looking at what was bad, what divided us, look at the progress. And that's where people fail, is you're not looking how we've become better. You keep putting us back in the past and keeping us at the same evil stages that we were before. Because you refuse to accept good, wholesome principles yourself. Your heart is damaged, your mind is damaged some way because you want to remain in that evil stage, that bad stage, that negative stage, so for some reason, and not learn to forgive, not learn to become better yourself, not learn to become God-fearing yourself, and you want to reject everything that is good and wholesome. There are certain people on the left and in the Democrat part of it, literally, they just want power, they want control. And if they're not going to get that, they just want to see everything burn. This is Uriah Kennedy from God and Country, and I've been fishing since I was a little kid. My father used to take me out there and teach me how to tie the knots to get my lure on the end of that line, and then cast it into the stream or in the local lake that we were fishing at. There are very few things in this world that are more relaxing and more fun than getting out on the water and pulling in a big fish. In order to have that type of success that you want, to be able to get out there with your kids and be able to have them have that success, or not get skunked yourself, you have to have the best equipment. We all have known and trusted Rapala from the time we were little kids. Rapala has the best lures and the best equipment that you could possibly buy. Trust Rapala in all these needs, and go to Rapala by using the link that is on our description, or QR code that's going to be popping up on your screen. Again, you must use the link in our description or the QR code that's popping up on your screen. Trust Rapala for these fishing needs. Again, any type of lures, tools, knives, clothing, and apparel that you will need, you can go to Rapala and get those needs taken care of. Enjoy the water and enjoy being out there with your kids, and be successful at the same time, because there's nothing like getting skunked, but there's nothing more joyous than pulling in that big fish. So trust Rapala for those fishing needs, and go to Rapala right now using the link in the description, the QR code that's popping up on your screen, and thank you for supporting our channel.
I think the criticism we've received since doing this, and I had prayed about it before I agreed to co-host with Uriah, and because I knew that I would open myself up to criticism and a lot of ugly, and I thought, can I withstand that? And I thought, no, yeah, you're going to be stronger. But what's opened my eyes is the comments that I see. I think those who have no faith in any faith, their disadvantage is they perceive that those of faith, we think we're holier than thou, that we think we're better than they are. And what they don't understand is that we know our own imperfections, and because of that, that's why we want our faith. That's why we turn to Christ or Allah or whoever we turn to, because we want to be better. And I know somebody's going to take exception with what I just said, but we don't. And what brings us the joy is that that faith gives us hope that we're not worth nothing, that we can continue to realign with the path. And every time we fall down, that we can get back up and look back and say, well, I'm better than I was yesterday. I'm not where I want to be. I look back at myself from my youth, from my first marriage, and I think, you know what? Whenever I'm beating myself up, I'm like, well, I'm not where I was then. And it's because of him, because he loves me and he doesn't give up on me. And I often comment to some of the ugly comments when inspired to, and I'll tell them, God's never going to stop reaching out to win you back. Never. He's never going to give up on you. And you're worth more than this.
Well said. Well said. Well, to answer the comment that I made a few minutes ago, I guess there's a fundamental understanding of God that a lot of people miss. And it's the basis of America. It's this, it's agency. Our God is not a tyrant, and he is willing to respect our agency both as individuals, as families, and as countries. And so what happened in the founding and how sacred is that agency? It is so sacred that he will not stop anyone from being stupid, misusing their agency to destroy themselves and others. He won't stop them. That's how fundamental agency is, because if he controls people's decisions, if he controls their choices, then he becomes responsible for their actions, and he cannot and will not. The United States of America was founded on this lone principle foremost, that men can govern themselves, that they are capable through influence and light and truth and knowledge, Bible, if you ask George Washington, that they can govern themselves and live in civil society and find happiness, peace, prosperity, and joy. They are capable. Where the rest of the world, literally in 1776 or 1787, the rest of the world was either tyranny or monarchy or gradations in between. The Americans were the first one to take the principle of God-given agency and enshrine it in our institutions. And first and foremost came the Declaration of Independence. And that Declaration of Independence is our American creed. It's the statement of our principles of what we believe as Americans. Now, from 1776 to 2026, we've never yet lived up to it. Our Declaration of Independence is just like the Sermon on the Mount. And the Sermon on the Mount concludes with, "Be ye therefore perfect." Well, I don't know about you, but I have yet to even come close to living up to that creed of the Sermon on the Mount. It wasn't given to me to hold me to it. It was given to me as the ideal of a blessed, God-fearing life. The Declaration of Independence is the same thing. It's a statement of principles. It's a creed for the American people to live up to, and we've never yet made it. So therefore, people say, yeah, the God of this land, right. Slavery and bigotry and capitalism and colonialism, right. You have missed the point, Junior, badly. Because whether we be an individual or a nation, God gave us a credo, a set of principles here and in the Constitution, and said, now, this is how you prosper as a civil society. This is how you become a happy people. Now go and do your best, and I'll help you. From the very moment, and this is a fascinating study, from the very moment that the Constitution was ratified in 1787, or it came out of the convention and was ratified subsequently, but from 1791 onwards and the Bill of Rights, we have done nothing but fight and argue about what the Constitution means. Even the founders themselves that were in the convention, namely Hamilton, and Jefferson wasn't there and Adams wasn't there, but Hamilton and Madison were adversaries. They were both men who got it drafted, got it ratified, and after they put the government in place, couldn't agree on how it applied. We've been fighting over those documents since they were ratified. That's the whole idea. We should fight. And if we made choices as a nation to be stupid and support or turn a blind eye to slavery, did God condone that? No. Did he condone colonialism, bigotry? Did he condone all of the wars we've been engaged in? No, he did not. We chose that. But that does not make those sacred principles wrong, or that he wasn't involved. It simply illustrates that we were given good and the choice to see what we would do with it.
You look at every Hollywood movie out there, and Hollywood knows the difference between right and wrong. We see it in every single movie because the good guy always wins, right?
Used to be that way, yeah.
The good guy always wins. You look at some of my favorite movies is like the Planet of Happiness, or the In Search of Happiness with
Man's Search for Happiness.
Man's Search for Happiness with Will Smith. And he's standing up at the fence and talking to his son and just telling him, it says, you go for it. You get it. Right? It's his speech there is one of the most heartwarming speeches ever, because he had just been through just hell on earth, right? As the homeless person, and he finally makes it out there. That's the American dream right there, is you can accomplish that. The people around him were perfect. People weren't giving him a leg up or hand up or anything else like that. He fought for his own dream. You look at one of my favorite is Rocky V, where he's standing in front of his son, and he has that tremendous speech. I might even play a second of it here. So,
you know, living with you, it hasn't been easy. People see me, but they think of you. Now with all this going on, this is gonna be worse than ever.
It don't have to be.
No, sure it does.
Why? You got a lot going on, kid.
Oh, what, my last name? That's the reason I got a decent job. That's the reason why people deal with me in the first place. Now I start to get a little ahead. I start to get a little something for myself, and this happens. Now I'm asking you as a favor not to go through with this, okay? This is only gonna end up bad for you, and it's gonna end up bad for me.
You think I'm hurting you?
Yeah, in a way you are.
That's the last thing I ever wanted to do.
I know that's not what you want to do, but that's just the way that it is. Don't you care what people think? Doesn't it bother you that people are making you out to be a joke and that I'm going to be included in that? Do you think that's right? Do you?
You ain't gonna believe this, but you used to fit right here. I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful. It was great just watching you every day. It was like a privilege. Then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
we'll just kind of go through that. I see that Hollywood has the right principles, and they put stuff out like this. But yet in our society right now, we have this victim mentality, this victimization. The more of a victim you can become, the better you are. You have a lot of people in the LGBT community saying, I'm gay, lesbian, transgender, and they list out all these victim things, these subcategories of themselves, right? Like the more subcategories of victimization that they have, they can attribute to themselves, the better they are. And then they become that victim. And that's not them. Because that's not how winning is done, right? People don't recognize themselves as sons and daughters of God anymore. If you recognize yourself as a son and daughter of God, if you recognize Christ in your life, if you recognize all these other things, then all of a sudden there's something more than just this life, right? There's a bigger goal, there's a bigger vision. And all of a sudden you wake up to reality that I'm not any of these labels that people put on me. You become a better person. You look at the country in and of itself and say, same thing about the country. It is not all these labels that people put on it. We're not bigots. We're not slaveholders. We're not all these other things. It's a nation of millions fighting through the same weaknesses that every other human being has. And if we don't start looking at ourselves as better people and getting rid of that victim mentality, and if it's not the victim mentality, it's that entitlement mentality. Those two things are destroying us right now, is the victimization and the entitlement. You owe me this. I need to have this because I'm the victim.
I had an experience just recently that was life-changing. Last fall, I took a tour group and went to Romania. Romania was one of the last countries to finally give up communism. I spent a week touring through Romania with a native Romanian teaching me, and I will never be the same. I grew up hearing all about the evils of communism, and then I watched the wall come down, and I watched the Soviet Union fall apart. You could spend a whole university career studying communism and the effects of socialism of that stripe, and you wouldn't even come close to what you could learn in a week in Romania by walking among those people and talking to them and seeing what socialism did to them. They are now still, ever since 1989, they're still reeling. They're still struggling to recover. Their economy still isn't there. They're people who lived through Ceausescu and the communist domination over that country have been so conditioned mentally that they can't be a free people. They can't be a free people. They were taken care of for too long. So I say that because, one, for all those cocky socialists out there who think they've got answers, I wholeheartedly disagree. You do not know. You cannot see what socialism run amok can do to a people, and still love the idea of agency, happiness, peace, power, and personal prosperity. The two ideas are as antithetical as you can possibly get. I came, and the same thing happened to me when I went to Vietnam for the first time. I grew up in the Vietnam War, barely missed the draft. They ended it, and I became eligible. But I heard all about Vietnam, but I never understood that war until I went to Vietnam and saw it for what it really was from their perspective. It was life-changing. So all of that is to say, there are some of us who may not have the most adroit university education, and my doctoral studies was in political science. We may not know every fact, but when it comes to the idea of certifying that happiness is in agency, it's in the right to choose, me having my right and you respecting my right and me respecting yours, and allowing us to work together as a civil society and watch and check each other. But at the same time, we're all out for the same thing, like you said. If we don't do that, we will self-destruct. There is not a nation on earth that can beat us. Like Lincoln said, there's not a country on earth that could come within 1,000 miles of the Mississippi River. And a trial of 1,000 years, he said, if we die, it will be by self-destruction. I wrote a book to say, come back to the basic principles, not of slavery and colonialism and capitalism. Come back to the basic principles of agency, freedom, choice, liberty. Respect it, learn how to get it, and then respect it for others. And then you will find happiness.
I also wrote a book. This is, everybody can get it up below us. One of the main things I point out in my book, and probably 4 or 5 chapters in this are dedicated this, is why do bad things happen to good people? That is the one question that when most people become angry and bitter against the country, against God. We had slavery, where there was bigotry, there was racism between the different skins, the different religions, the different sects. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen. Why would God let this all happen? Why did God let this slaughter during World War II happen to the Jews? Why didn't God let innocent children be bought and sold throughout the world, where we have this huge problem nowadays with sex trafficking? Why is all these bad things happening? And it comes down to that right of freedom. Many people don't realize the choices we made, and I'm not going to go through them all, but the choices we made in the pre-earth life that brought us here in the first place reflect a lot of those choices that we made. I mean, we had freedom there, we had freedom here before God decided to stick us all down here. And like you said, we as individuals have so much freedom that we can inflict sorrow and pain upon others. But at the same time, the whole reason why Christ did what he did is he knew that bad things are going to happen to good people. I know bad things are going to happen to you. I know it's not going to be fair. I know it's not going to be just. I know it's going to be hard for a lot of you. But that's the whole reason why I came down and did what I did. So I can take that pain, I can take that hardship. I'm not just taking your sins from me, helping you become clean through repentance. I'm taking everything. And if people had that type of faith and type of belief, then the victim mentality, this, I hate this country, I hate God because of so much bad things happen to good people, all that disappears. It just disintegrates. It's just simple understanding. It's going back to the roots and why our founding fathers crossed the Atlantic Ocean to come here for freedom in the first place, because they weren't able to believe in God in the way they wanted to believe it and have that happiness. Yet we have a lot of people that want to take that happiness away. Amongst the different Christian religions and Christians against Jews, Jews against Christians and all that kind of stuff, there's this fight of you're the Antichrist and you're the Antichrist and you're the Antichrist, and because you're
the great Satan.
You're the great Satan because you believe differently. The very definition of the word Antichrist means I'm anti-Christ. So anybody that has even a semblance of belief in God and in Jesus Christ, you're not anti-Christ because you have some belief. It doesn't matter how different your beliefs are than my beliefs are. We're not anti-Christian. We're not anti-Christ. There are only 2 or 3 things in this world that are legitimately and completely anti-Christ. And those are socialism, communism, and extremist Muslims. Because they specifically want to get rid of all other religions. It's them or nothing, right? It's you convert, you pay a tax, you die, essentially. And we're not coming together as Judeo-Christians around this world and becoming one. Because if we keep fighting amongst ourselves, the Antichrist portion of this world, which is the socialism and communism and extremist Muslims, will take over. That it's happening right now. You can see it throughout Europe, how they bend to everything that is good and wholesome. They become pacifists. They essentially give excuses for anything that's any reason why they're not defending true wholesome principles. They rationalize everything, even with this whole thing with Trump bombing Iran over the last couple of weeks. There's a whole reason why we have to take them out of power, because they can't have a nuclear bomb. There's a whole bunch of reasons. But yet you see the Prime Minister of Canada, you see the Prime Minister of I think it was France or one of the others before they got bombed, all coming in and saying, well, we're not going to condemn the United States, but we're not agreeing with what they're doing over there. We don't think they should be doing a regime change. Or what they did down in Maduro. I'm like, people are dying. People are suffering. And I go back to the whole Hollywood statement that Hollywood knew what was right. You look at the Spider-Man movie, with the greater power becomes the greater responsibility, right? Everybody knows that quote from Spider-Man, but yet people don't want to live by it. We have the greater power as a country, and yet we're going to sit back and do nothing? I mean, we don't want boots on the ground having United States citizens dying in a lot of these other nations, but we can't sit back and do nothing either, because that's not right. That's not Christian either. But yet we want to sit back here and just ridicule each other. You're the Antichrist, and not find where the true Antichrist is. Not find what's really going to destroy us completely, utterly. What Satan's plan was from the beginning was not having your freedom, right? I decide I'm going to force it upon you. We're going to save everybody. And that is socialism, that is communism, and that is the extremist Muslim religion to a T. And that's all it's ever been, is his original plan that he's trying to put forth there anyway, in spite of all that is good. Mm-hmm. Tell us about this other book you got here.
Well, let me talk about both of these books first. This book right here is called, it's what I've been referring to. It's called The God of This Land. I got to get it where they can see it. There it is. The God of This Land. And this is probably 30 years in the making. It goes all the way back to the original stories I did on radio. Because I've always believed that the United States of America was founded by the Christian God. That he was instrumental in inspiring, not revealing in terms of the difference in those words, but inspiring the founding of this nation. So along that way, I sat down and gathered stories over 30 years. It's not a big book. It's pretty thin. But there's 40 stories in here about events in America and people in the founding of America who acted beyond power, beyond their own. And so this book is a testimony that Jesus Christ is the God of this land. Notwithstanding what I said a few minutes ago about how he established this land, and he still works with flawed, stupid people sometimes, who make bad choices both as individuals and as a nation. We've made bad choices. We have need to repent, but he still works with us, and that's what this book is about. If you believe that Jesus Christ is the God of this land and that we need to return to founding principles, then this book is an interesting read. You'll enjoy it. This book, this one here, is called The Spirit of 76. I didn't write this book. It was written by Susan Easton Black, Mary Jane Searle, and Kenneth L. Alford. It's a collection of 76 Americans who were Latter-day Saints, who made a significant contribution to the history of the United States of America. Some were politicians, some were artists, sculptors, they were athletes. I mean, they were every walk of life. Stories in here about Jack Dempsey, and I mean, there's just some fun stories in here. But it's called Spirit of 76, Latter-day Saints Who Shaped America. I helped to publish it. So that book is available and brand new. So that's the two books.
Now, did you specifically hold this? Were you planning on this for the 250-year anniversary of America? Or
no, that landed by accident.
By accident, huh?
Yeah, because I'd been collecting and working on these stories for years, and a couple of years ago, we decided we would publish it, but it took so long to get that process through. It landed in America 250. That was accidental. I was not setting out to capitalize on our celebration. That just happened by accident.
Divine accident.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. But it has been well received. And like I said, I've been a poster child for darts and venom because of it, but that's okay.
So tell us about some of the most memorable stories and places that you've been in.
You mean in my travels?
Both. What's your most memorable stories that you've delivered, and obviously your most memorable places that you've been at?
One of the most memorable places I've been in is the opening chapter of this book. It was Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'd read about that my whole life, and I couldn't wait to go there. And then finally, I took a tour group there by assignment. And I remember my first day going downtown in Philadelphia to Independence Square. And I got down there, and for the first time, I'm looking right down the green, and there's Independence Hall. I don't know on a day that a temple would have been any more sacred to me than was that day of standing in that hallowed building where men fought and argued and contended, but forthwith came the Declaration of Independence, and forthwith came the American Constitution. Because I held those principles hallowed and sacred, and as revelation from God, the building and the place became holy ground for me. And then to stand right outside and teach the story, to stand on that ground and point at that building and say, now let me tell you the miracle of July 2nd, 1776. On that day, when America and her entire future hung on a moment in a boat. And it shouldn't have happened, but by some miracle it did. That's one of my special places. Another one that relates to this book is in jolly old England. I take people on tours over there all the time. We'll spend 2 weeks in England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. One of my favorite places is a cow pasture. And just outside of London, there is a cow pasture right alongside the River Thames, and it's called Runnymede. And it was on that swampy, soggy cow pasture, be careful where you step, where the Magna Carta was drafted and signed. And I tell the story of King John and Magna Carta and the overthrow of the monarchy. That place just gives me piddle chills every time I go there. And then there's more. I mean, there's just, no matter what the subject, there's a place where I have been where it's hallowed ground. I'm looking forward to going back to Thailand, like I was mentioning earlier, to Chiang Mai. There's a temple. I can't even pronounce it because I don't speak the language, but there's a temple that sits high up on the mountain above Chiang Mai in those mountains. And the story of its sacred founding to the Buddhists is so similar to my theology that I can't wait to take a group there and immerse them in that place and that moment, and they will walk away looking at the Buddhists and going, now I understand you. Another one of my favorite places is standing on the edge of the river, the Platte River, right outside of Casper, Wyoming, and teaching the story of our pioneer forefathers who crossed the plains at their sacrifice. And some of them didn't make it, but they came on faith. And we call it faith in our God. We call it faith in Jesus Christ. But really, those pioneers came because of something we would all understand. It's the American dream. They came from all over the world and crossed the Great Plains at immense sacrifice so that they could have their own vine and fig tree, or the sacred rights of property and happiness. Those are 3 examples of places that are sacred to me. There are many more.
One of my biggest dreams that I want to go to is Omaha Beach and Utah Beach.
Been there. And it's
That's what I
worth
was-
going.
That's what I was just going to ask you. What did you feel? What did you experience when you went to those sites, D-Day?
I bawled. I just bawled. The first time I went to the cemetery there, I was just walking through the headstones, and all of a sudden, without any warning, right in the middle of the day, the Star-Spangled Banner started to play. And I'm walking through these perfectly arranged headstones that commemorate those who died on that day. And that anthem started to play, and I just started to bawl. I I was overwhelmed by the feeling of gratitude for their sacrifice. And I know enough about that war to know that none of those boys wanted to be there. They were fighting for a dream that they had, but that had been taken from the people who were in front of them on the continent. They crossed the channel. They didn't want to do it. They knew what was waiting for them. But on the other side of the channel, on the continent of Europe, the Germans had taken, the Nazis and their allies had taken away the right of self-governance from people all the way from Amsterdam to Germany, clear to Russia. And those boys came ashore to fight and die so that those people could have the right to choose who they would be. I go all over the world, and I see people decrying Americans and calling us all kinds of names, but in that region, to this day in France, those people who are French citizens are profoundly grateful and remember with sacred gratitude that day and those men and why they died, and they have not forgotten, and they are still grateful. When the rest of them hate us, they don't.
And we're getting some of that bad sentiment even nowadays, because back in World War II, we could have stayed at home. We could have just said, hey, we're not getting involved. We probably would have gotten involved with Japan no matter what, because what they did in Hawaii. But we could have just stayed back and just let that ocean be the barrier between us and Hitler, and he could have taken over all of Europe. And he eventually may have tried to come across the ocean, but it wouldn't have been successful. He never would have been able to land.
He would have taken England.
He would have taken England. He probably would have taken everything over there. But we could have sat back and just still done nothing. Oh, he's not going to get across the ocean. If he tries, he's not going to succeed. And we would just put up our walls, put up our barriers, and just stay at home and did nothing. Right? We had that choice. And I get that mentality a lot of times from people who don't want us to get involved in Israel, don't want to get us to get involved in Venezuela or South America or Iran or in Ukraine or any of these other places. You can't sit back with the power that we have and just let good people die. Now, there's a limit to how we want to be involved, because, again, it's very, very hard for us to send our boys over there and just have us die for other people. So I'm a complete opponent to having boots on the ground in a lot of these places. But at the same time, I don't want to have our people die. And we can't sit back and do nothing either, because that is completely immoral.
I gained a perspective on this on the first day of the Israel-Hamas war, the day that Hamas crossed that southern border and attacked Israel. I have many friends in Israel, both Jewish, Israeli, and Muslim. One of my dearest friends is a Muslim tribal chief over there. But I landed in Tel Aviv on the morning of that attack. I landed at 10 o'clock. The war had started just before that. Tel Aviv was being bombed as I pulled into town. And as soon as I landed, I couldn't get back out. And I spent that night in a hotel room there in Tel Aviv with the missiles and the rockets coming up out of Gaza, landing in Tel Aviv all around me. And I watched the helicopters bringing in the dead and the wounded into the hospital and the morgue, like literally from here to that staircase right beside me. I experienced it. I've been over there enough to know that every people have a right to defend their freedom. They have a right to preserve those principles that guarantee their happiness, their property and prosperity, that allow them to raise a family. I don't presume to understand enough to know the intricacies of every nation's struggles. But I do know people have a right to be free. It's a God-given right. It's not an American right. It's a God-given right. And I will do my best to defend their freedom and allow them to defend themselves. Every man has a right to self-governance until he hurts someone else. So that experience changed my whole perspective on the Muslim-Jewish conflict, whether the nation of Israel should exist. I see both sides of it. I've been there so many times. I see both sides of that struggle. They both have a point. But they are a textbook case of two sides talking past each other. They won't talk to each other. They can't. And because of that, it will eventually escalate into Armageddon. They both have a point. Everybody has a side in the story. We just need to listen. Listen to each other.
Well, not only just listen, but stop trying to decide that the other side just needs to be dead, right?
The other side is the great Satan and needs to be dead. Yeah,
Needs to be dead. Because as much as people will want to blame Israel for everything that's going on, Israel's lived in peace for a very, very long time without any conflicts. And every single time something arises, it's the extremists, it's Hamas, it's Hezbollah that keep bringing all this stuff up. And I have a lot of friends who are Muslim. I have a couple of employees of mine that are foreign employees in Pakistan, these other countries. We talk about the Islamic faith all the time and what they do. And they're really, really good people. What the problem is again, it's that anti-humanity problem that's over there where I've got to conquer the planet. I've got to have jihad against the entire planet. You've got to either convert to my religion, die, or pay the jizya tax, right? And that's what's disrupting the peace over there. And people don't want to separate the extremists of that from the side of people that are just good and just want to live and let live, right? And people want to always find blame in anybody that professes to be good and wholesome. If the Jewish faith professes that we're a Jehovah and God-fearing people and we want to live in peace, people want to find fault with it and tear it apart. If people in the United States are Christians and we want to defend Israel, we don't want to defend anybody that wants this freedom, people want to tear it apart and just try to find things where you're hypocritical. Again, I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not trying to be all godly and everything like that. I'm sure Trump isn't either. But when you have people out there that just nonstop just want to tear things apart and find the fault instead of find what brings us together, we're going to have these conflicts.
I'm a very simple-minded fellow, I suppose, because I believe that if I ever make it to heaven, it isn't because I wrote a book, or it isn't because I served in some great responsibility. It's because I lived my life in such a way that I loved my fellow men, and I tried to do good by them every day, that my heavenly mansion will be built 1 2x4 at a time by little things that I did. Little, and I do mean little things that no one ever noticed, little things that I did to take care of my family, my friends, my country, my people. I have a son who enlisted in the Air Force 3 weeks ago. He signs up, lands in basic training, and we go to war. Great timing.
Great timing.
I believe that me giving my son and my son giving his service to this country, that my heavenly reward will be based on a lifetime of little things that are never noticed. Similarly, everything I do to hurt someone else, whether individually or politically and civically, everything I do to hurt someone else not only will damn me, but it will make them miserable, and I will stand accountable for it. At the end of the day, no matter what your faith, but if you believe in a higher power, you believe you're going to stand accountable, and you know you're coming to judgment. We could learn a lot from the Buddhists if we would just listen to them. Therefore, my summum bonum of the whole thing is, understand that you are going to face God someday, and you're going to give an accounting for everything you've said and done to this country and to each other.
Well, I want to impress the point you just made that everybody deserves to be free, right? That freedom comes from God, not from some piece of paper like the Constitution. And the whole reason why the United States of America was established is because we believe we get our freedoms from Almighty God and not from the government. The government does not provide it. It's we the people. It's God that provides that. And if God provides that freedom to the United States of America, God provides that same freedom for everybody. Mm-hmm. Now, again, we may not want to have boots on the ground and be dying over in other countries, but we've got to stand up and promote freedom just because we know that everybody deserves that and gives them the best chance that they have. I want to compliment President Trump when he stood up there and says, look, to the Iranian people, this is the best opportunity, probably the only opportunity you're going to have in a generation to stand up and take your freedom back. We're going to give you the opportunity. We're not going to put boots on the ground, but we're going to give you the opportunity. We're going to take out every leadership we can. You guys need to take the bull by the horns. You need to take the reins and create that freedom. And we know for a fact that that's what they're going to do, because people strive for that freedom. They want that freedom, and they'll pick it up. We see how hard Israel fights. We see how hard Hong Kong and Singapore are fighting. They tend to not get taken over by China, right? We see people actually out there fighting for freedom. I made this point last week when Brooks Benson was on here. I see a lot of people coming over from Romania and these other countries that have experienced extreme socialism. And they specifically came over here for freedom. And then they come over here and they see all these protests and people pushing for socialism, pushing for this and pushing for that. And they're going through the process of becoming U.S. citizens and swearing in. And then they're getting up there and saying, I don't understand what you're doing. And they're literally, they're crying, says, you don't understand what we went through over there.
Right.
I did everything I could to get out of that. And yet.
And you're pushing for
You're
it.
pushing for it.
That was my point.
What
with
are you
Romania.
doing with your own country? The world looks up to this country. You guys are the only beacon that the rest of the world has. Why are you trying to destroy this? We're all trying to escape to what you have or build what you have. Why would you do that? You've got son just joined the Air Force. All my kids are in the military, all of them. So my oldest servant is still in the Army, and my second son just got out of the Air Force. He just did 7 years in the Air Force, was a C-130 mechanic, and I have my youngest or second youngest son, my adopted son, are currently deployed in Germany right now. So we're a full red-blooded American military supporting family over here because I've just lived this for my entire life almost with my kids. So we understand the sacrifices of those who have gone before us. I mean, my grandparents, I have one grandparent that fought in Korea, and he tells horrendous stories. I have another grandparent fought in World War II on a battleship, and to try to get him to talk about anything was incredibly difficult for what he lived through. And as a young teenager, I was trying to do reports for school, and I'd interview him and pulling teeth to get him to talk about anything because he saw a lot of death and destruction during World War II. And yet we have a generation right now that appreciates nothing. There's just no gratitude. There's no history lessons there. It's just, and it's incredibly sad and disheartening for a lot of us who do these podcasts and others. That's why we're doing them, is because we see the next generation just losing faith in God, losing faith in the country, losing their appreciation, losing gratitude. And like I said, entitlement starts popping up. Victim mentality starts popping up, and you can see the road of destruction that's going down. This is Uriah Kennedy from God and Country, and I've been fishing since I was a little kid. My father used to take me out there and teach me how to tie the knots to get my lure on the end of that line, and then cast it into the stream or in the local lake that we were fishing at. There are very few things in this world that are more relaxing and more fun than getting out on the water and pulling in a big fish. In order to have that type of success that you want, to be able to get out there with your kids and be able to have them have that success, or not get skunked yourself, you have to have the best equipment. We all have known and trusted Rapala from the time we were little kids. Rapala has the best lures and the best equipment that you could possibly buy. Trust Rapala in all these needs, and go to Rapala by using the link that is on our description, or QR code that's going to be popping up on your screen. Again, you must use the link in our description or the QR code that's popping up on your screen. Trust Rapala for these fishing needs. Again, any type of lures, tools, knives, clothing, and apparel that you will need, you can go to Rapala and get those needs taken care of. Enjoy the water and enjoy being out there with your kids. and be successful at the same time, because there's nothing like getting skunked, but there's nothing more joyous than pulling in that big fish. So trust Rapala for those fishing needs, and go to Rapala right now using the link in the description, the QR code that's popping up on your screen. And thank you for supporting our channel.
One of the most, if I could, I would take all of these anti-Americans that are living in this country. I wouldn't do it by force. I would do it by invitation. Come with me and let me take you to the killing fields of Cambodia and Vietnam. Let me take you and walk over ground where there are human bones still sticking up today, where there are a memorial with hundreds of human skulls on visual display. Let me take you and show you these places and let you walk through there. Let me take you through the Hanoi Hilton and show you where American prisoners fought and died and were tortured until they succumbed. Let me show you some of these places where our people went and fought and died to help others. Right or wrong, they were just there to help somebody else. Let me show you these places where socialism, run amok, went to its farthest extremes with genocide. Let me show you. And now you come back and tell me you want to create the same thing here. Go ahead.
We will put links to these books at the bottom of them. This is a beautiful book, and I'm really excited to read this one. Also a beautiful book. And then Uriah's book will always be at the bottom of any of our links and on our YouTube channel. We are privileged to have had you on here. I got chills during so many of your stories, and I almost want to invite anybody who's on either side of the fence here to watch this episode and see if your heart isn't pricked to something greater than what you feel before. I mean that sincerely.
Thank you.
Well, it's amazing you've been to a lot of these places. The killing fields, Cambodia, the Hilton, like you talked. I heard about those and history lessons, stuff like that. Kind of end here. What's your feeling when you're walking to those places and you know how many people have literally died in some of those places?
The only thing that describes it for me is hallowed ground. And I've found hallowed. We talk about Israel as the Holy Land. Well, I've learned that there are holy ground in various places around the world. I always have this feeling when I go to places where people like the killing fields, where so many died because of tyranny. I'll be in Hiroshima in Japan in about 3 weeks, and it'll be my first time there to see where that bomb was dropped. I'll get a perspective on that I have no textbook could ever give me. When I go to these places in these other countries, I walk with reverence and deep respect. Even if I don't ideologically agree with them, I walk with respect because I know what's happened in these places as it pertains to freedom and righteousness. So I tread very lightly and with great respect.
I wish the rest of the world would do that. Just respect. And again, just bringing God back into it, it's if we just had just a little faith, it would go so further. Because when you have that type of faith, when you have that type of belief that you know that there is a creator out there, and the creator created all of us, there's a much, much higher respect for each other.
That's what the Buddhists bring to the table, is they are taught from their very beginnings to respect and seek for unity, harmony, and not to make waves. My recommendation, and it sounds so juvenile, but my recommendation to all Americans, to all citizens everywhere, be good moms and dads, be good children, take care of each other and love each other, and all the rest of our problems will solve themselves. Amen. Amen. That's it.
Yeah, the first place where this country went wrong is the destruction of the family, just destroying everything that has to do with the principal foundation of everything, which is the family, the nuclear family. And anything that deteriorates that, we've got to steer away from. What everybody out there's got to understand is that there's a certain level of discernment that you've got to start having. And if you've lost God, if you've lost faith, if you've lost patriotism, you do not have the discernment to make decisions anymore. You just don't have it. So stop making decisions. When you get back to faith, to patriotism, to ethics and values, go ahead and start making decisions again. And you'll find that your decisions are going to be completely different than they were before. I've seen so many people that have come over from the left that have come back to Christianity. We saw the massive amount of people that went back to church after Charlie Kirk was killed. Just floods of people just all of a sudden finding their faith again. It doesn't take something that extreme all the time to bring you back. But if you just gave yourself a minute and got yourself out of the bubble sometimes, out of the victim mentality, out of that entitlement mentality, after that fault finding, you'll find your path back again. And that's all you have to do.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
After you.
Well, I was just going to say one thought. Isaiah makes mention in the latter part of the book about young men married to their nation, speaking of the Lord's nation, of not Israel today, but the nation of the gathered Israel in Isaiah, the prophecy of the future gathering of Israel. He speaks and makes reference to young men married with zeal to their nation. Now you think about that metaphor. If every one of us was married to America with the same idea of covenants in marriage, of sacred institution, and the idea of nurturing and care that is associated with marriage, and you apply that to America, what a different world we'd have.
Where else? I know that I watch your stories on Facebook. Where else can people find you?
Well, besides being on the radio with Sounds of Sunday program and KSL here in Utah, they can find me at glennrawsonstories.com, and that's Glenn Rawson Stories on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, and then they can also find me at historyofthesaints.org.
And what tours are you doing? I mean, what's the name of the company? And
There's several different companies, but the main one is Fun for Less Tours out of Draper, Utah. I will do tours this year. I will do tours in Middle East, in the Far East, Southeast Asia, and Japan, and then I'll do two tours in Israel. I'll spend a month in the British Isles. I'll be in Alaska. I was just in Hawaii a couple weeks ago doing a tour down there, and I'll do an America 250 tour, which is connected to this book.
I would love to do that tour.
I will do an America 250 tour for 2 weeks where we'll go from Boston down to Jamestown, and it's all the history of the American founding and places where it happened.
Are there still spots available for that?
I think the last time I checked, there were 4 or 5 spots left.
Is it not anymore?
There's probably still a couple of spots. Michael Wilcox is doing an earlier tour. I'm doing a September tour, so it's probably close to sold out. So, and then I'll be in Alaska. So,
What tours in Alaska? What stories are up there?
oh, mercy. It's a tour where we land in Anchorage, and I tell the history of all the way
Old
back.
West or something, or
Oh, no. Not in Alaska. We tell the story of Russian Alaska.
oh, really?
Bring it up to American Alaska. Then we take a jet and fly up over into the Canadian Yukon and teach the stories of the Yukon Gold Rush. It was some of the most beautiful scenery and some of the funnest stories. It's a great place.
Wow,
I don't know that I would call that hallowed ground, but it sure is fun.
it sure is fun. Well, good. We greatly appreciate you being on our podcast. It's been very enlightening as well as solemn, I would have to say. So emotional. So hopefully you come back on again sometime.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Hopefully everybody gets a hold of these books and reads into them. Again, like, subscribe, and share us. Make sure you're helping us get out there as much as possible. We need all the help and assistance we can get. Next Friday, the 13th, we're going to be at the Capitol building, 11 a.m. in the presentation room within the museum at the Capitol. It's on the east side of the building. We're going to have our special podcast. It's going to be the town hall format. Again, we're going to have Carrie Ann Lisby on there, Trevor Lee. We're going to have Heidi Baldry. We're going to have
Corinne Johnson
and Dan McKay on there, plus a couple families that are coming from homes that have either committed suicide, have had death in the family, or have had faced bullying or other issues in our local schools to discuss that big topic. All the news networks have been invited, so if you decide to show up there, then stand in the audience and you can talk to people afterwards, but we ask everybody to be quiet during the podcast. Afterwards, we're going to have, or the following weeks, we're going to have even more powerful people coming onto the podcast, so stay tuned for that. Look down below again one more time. You'll find my book down there. You'll find our shirts down there. Support the channel. We appreciate everybody being on board, and we will see you on the next video.